It is the distant past, the year 2000. The book world is very different ever since the Harry Potter uprising of the mid-90s. With the overwhelming success of the previous books in the series, publishers decide to unleash the Muggle mob upon local bookstores all over the world for the midnight release of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, certainly, there were book release parties before this point, but never to this scale. Since then, several popular series have held their own midnight release parties, from YA novels like The Hunger Games and Twilight to more recently romantasy books with Fourth Wing and ACOTAR. Most of the time, these events take place at your little old bookstore around the corner. You camp out the night before to be 10th in line, then finally purchase your release day copy with fancy art on the edges. You take a picture with a sexy dragon while you're there, then head home to read the book until you can't keep your eyes open anymore. Books are released on Tuesdays. You have work tomorrow. What were you thinking? There is one author that does things a little bit differently, though.
Please welcome your hosts, Brandon and Emily Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson.
Herbert Cox, sticking a pickle.
I demand your obedience.
Sandra Branderson does not have a million midnight release parties, at least not yet. Instead, he and his company Dragonsteel unite the world under one roof in the cold desert of Salt Lake City, Utah. I got the chance to work at the most recent of these events, Dragonsteel Nexus 2024, and I have some unique perspective and some thoughts on my experience. To be clear, this is not a review. My bias at this point is through the roof. I want to talk about both some positives and some negatives of the experience, but this is more a celebration. First, let's talk about how Brando Stone got to this point, at least in terms of his book release events. We could spend another hour talking about the series of fortunate events that led to his success, but we're focused on the convention today. So, in 2005, Brandon Wynn Sanderson released his first book, Elantris. Over the next 3 years, he popped out the entire Mistborn trilogy. During this time, he did regular type book signings at Barnes & Noble and Borders and the like. As far as I can tell, the first inkling of a bigger event came with The Gathering Storm at the BYU bookstore in 2009, which makes sense, right? The Wheel of Time already had an eager, huge fan base that was willing to come out for a midnight release event. Since that point, though, every major release that he has had a bigger and bigger release party. Most have been held at the BYU bookstore, but there's been the occasional release at the King's English in Salt Lake City or at Barnes & Noble local to his home in Utah. Around 2012, I read a couple of the guy's books for the first time, but I didn't really become involved in the wider fandom at that point. Apparently, I did sign up for the newsletter at some point, though, because in 2017, I received a form email inviting me to a release party for Oathbringer. The Brandonites were moving to the bigger and better Utah Valley Convention Center in Provo, Utah. I have to admit, I was not expecting the utter chaos that I found there. I walked up the stairs to the second floor and was met with everything everywhere all at once. Big lines, vendors, artists, and people sitting in the middle of the floor reading their own copy of the book. It was a little overwhelming. I got in line to get my own copy, but they were very well sold out by that point. But it did give me my first taste of the brand sanity that had been forming in the dark corners of the earth unbeknownst to me. Honestly, it's a realization that we all come to at some point. Am I right, Doug? I'll read Mistborn, you've convinced me, you can stop bothering me about it. Hey, that book was actually pretty good, thanks for recommending it to me. I'm gonna go return to my wife and kids now. Oh, you just want me to read his other 40 books and then camp out for the newest one, then go to some 3-day convention dressed up as a crab? Okay. Chef Sanderson and his budding company, Dragonsteel, held a few more events at Barnes & Noble, a high school auditorium, and even squeezed in another visit at the BYU bookstore. In 2020, the Rhythm of War release party was an online live stream, and then in 2021, they announced the first Dragonsteel Minicon back at the Utah Valley Convention Center for 2 whole days. I didn't go, but I'm told that it did in fact happen. Since then, each event has brought more fans, more authors, more artists, more vendors, more volunteers, all to celebrate books written by Emily Sanderson's husband.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to actually be in costume. Well,
you know.
Well, I am maidenless no more. If you...
After a grand total of 1 year, they dropped the Minicon label and said, "This isn't even my final form." Dragonsteel 2022 took place at the Salt Palace Convention Center in Salt Lake City, taking up half the space of the largest venue in Utah. At Dragonsteel 2023, I finally got pulled into the sandstorm and got the chance to volunteer. First, I prepared by getting caught up on the Cosmere and the Cytoverse, and then at the convention, I met a lot of really great people. I hung out with some giant slugs. I handed out VIP swag. It was awesome. I enjoyed it enough that I wanted to do it again. which brings us all the way back to Dragonsteel Nexus 2024. Part 1. Be Active. Dragonsteel Nexus 2024 was the event of the year for Brandos Fandos. It marked the release of Wind and Truth, the fifth and final book in the first arc of the Stormlight Archive series. Earlier in the year, all 7,500 tickets sold out within an hour of going live. They've come a long way since their first convention, which was only 1,500 people. It's doubled year over year, almost every year. But space is limited, and ways to create more space are not really available. They're already at the largest convention center in Utah, and that convention center has regulations in place that prevent them from expanding unless they prove that they can expand first. And so there's just not a lot of space available. But even then, selling out within an hour of going live surprised everyone, even Dragonsteel, as far as I'm aware. Fortunately, Brandy still had 2 untapped islands, and so in response, he sacrificed most of his personal tickets that he would have given to family and friends, and instead gave them to people who already booked tickets for hotels and airlines.
I'm going to sacrifice 2 mountains and Fire Blast Ren and 6.
I'm gonna mana drain that, buddy. Thanks for the 6 mana.
Whoa!
Dragonsteel and their partners spent months planning and preparing. For my part, they organized about 250 squires into one of 5 groups. Most of these did about what you would expect. Distribution squires helped out with registration, book bundles, and other merch. Programming helped with the panels, photo ops, cosplay, the convention game, and the craft and game rooms. Those in the store stocked shelves and helped you buy your stuff. Hospitality took care of everyone, and facilities did a little bit of everything else. There was a small group of us in hospitality that were trained to do a little bit of everything just in case we were needed in any specific part of the convention. And as part of that flexible group, I ended up helping out with book bundles and Worldhopper swag on day 1, and then helped out with the convention game for the rest of the event, because that's where we were needed. So that's kind of what I'm doing in the background of all this. On Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, attendees flocked to the convention center to pre-register. Once attendees got to the front of the line, they picked up their badge, which looks a little bit similar to mine, as well as a lanyard that shows off their Order of Knights Radiant. That introduces them to the convention motto, be part of the story. They also got a Worldhopper passport, as well as 2 packs of Story Deck trading cards. Both of these tied into the convention game, which was a fun surprise, and something we'll talk about in a minute. Still on the day before the event, there was a lot of people outside waiting in line in large winter coats, sitting on camp chairs and tents, waiting to get a low-numbered copy of the new Wind and Truth book. At some point, they were handed reserve signing tickets to be able to come back and get the book when it was actually released on Friday. Unfortunately, not everyone in line was able to get one of those reserve tickets, and so again, in response, the White Sand himself came out and took selfies with those people who weren't able to get a reserve ticket. All right. Now the convention's starting. The next day, VIPs entered at 10 a.m. and general admission came in at 11. As you walk forward, you see an information booth, a scattering of people in cosplay, life-size cutouts of Stormlight characters, and hallways that lead to greater destinations. You might find panels to your left in rooms labeled Roshar, Lumar, Scadrial, and Nalthus. Upstairs are tables for socializing and cosplay meetups. Through the main doors to your right, you'd find the bulk of the shopping and activities. Suddenly, your hero, Ben, walks down the hall right in front of you. What do? Unfortunately, you trip over nothing and fall flat on your face right in front of him. He walks over to you, shakes his head in disgust, and casts you off, seemingly forever. Last year, the Dragonsteel store was a bit of a problem. It had long lines, like multiple hours long, but this year they were able to get people in and out with a little bit more ease and speed. There were shirts and sweaters, pins and patches, playing cards, radiant socks, and more, including a large TARDIS-esque pavilion with deluxe editions of Sandermander's books. I actually liked that you could see the store so well from the show floor this year. Last year it was kind of tucked away in a different room, but this year, as you were trading cards with people or eating or whatever you might be doing, you might pass some radiant pajamas or a cursed Hoyd shirt or see the TARDIS off in the distance. In the next space over, in Cell, you could put together crafts like Roshar in a jar, Chiri Chiri crochet, Soulcaster jewelry, Risen's grass in a pot, or a felted pocket sprint. Personally, I love that this space existed for people to use. At a convention where we're celebrating authors and artists and game makers all creating wonderful things, it was great to have a place for people to go and make creations of their own. The local store We Geek Together provided hundreds of card and board games for anyone to play in Detritus. There was casual play, competitions, tabletop RPG sessions, and demos of the new Brotherwise Stormlight RPG and Mistborn deck building games. As a fan of card games myself, I was especially excited for the Mistborn game. Departing Detritus, along the opposite wall, there was a whole bunch of food vendors that were kind of sandwiching the LARP dueling grounds where you could learn to wield a shard blade or spear. In a large space in the back, the exhibitors took up residence in Canticle. There were so many great exhibitors there, and it's amazing to see the Branderson world come together. I wish I had footage of everyone and could highlight all the incredible authors, artists, game makers, Sanderson experts, and all the members of the Dragonsteel narrative department. Instead, I'll say my favorite purchase and my only regret from the convention, since they're both related to the exhibitor hall. My favorite purchase was a really awesome painting of Syl by Jessica Liu. My only regret was that it never quite worked out to see my other favorite author, Robin Hobb. Brandon was actually the one that recommended her books to me at a book signing several years ago, and I fell in love with the Realm of the Elderlings. I would have loved to go to one of her panels or bring a book for her to sign, but what I didn't realize at the time was that the Queen of Fantasy was also hanging out in the exhibitor hall for chunks of time when I could have gone and seen her. But that's okay. Luckily, I can just pretend I'm Petrick Leo for a moment and experience it through him. Up the stairs from the entrance were several cosplay meetups, and the cosplay at this convention was both incredible and ridiculous at the same time. I think at one point I saw a very convincing giant Mistwraith. There were a lot of different people dressed up as Pattern the Spren with like mechanical rotating faces. One person dressed up as the Tower Urithiru. There was one girl that I think was dressed up as Lift, and she had like a fork in her hand, and she was running back and forth like the entire time I was ever out in the halls. I'm sure there's a lot of other good examples, but there's just a lot of really cool people at this convention that were playing a part and making things fun in a way that they don't have to. They were like magnifying their experience and the experience for everyone else. It was great. If you walked out of the convention center and to the left where the Radisson Hotel was, there was kind of an island area for charity events, like taking pictures with Mistborn Santa and purchasing ornaments for the Lightweaver Foundation, or paying to get insulted by Hoyd, or lots of other things that you could do. My squiring kept me busy enough that I didn't make it over to the charity area, but I would love to hear about it if there's things that I haven't mentioned or things that you really enjoyed over there. Now, there's one more little activity that I haven't said too much about yet. It seems that Bran, Dan, and Isaac the Man had one more secret up their sleeves, and it lit the convention on fire.
This is the Lopen 49 card.
Dragonsteel has somewhat of a tradition of creating a convention game each year for people to have fun with, but also to push people to different parts of the convention space so that no one area has a ton of people. It kind of makes the convention experience better for everyone. In 2023, people collected reality icons tying into Defiant, the young adult Sanderson book that came out that year. This year, they created an even more complicated and huge, multifaceted scavenger hunt with a addicting card collectathon element to it. With your badge, you got a Worldhopper passport. This right here. You also got 2 packs of story deck cards. On your Worldhopper passport, you could get stamps for visiting different rooms throughout the convention. You might get a stamp by playing games in Detritus, or attending a panel in Roshar, or going and visiting several of the exhibitors. If you get enough stamps on a page, then you can go to the Silverlight Mercantile tent in the main big room in front of the exhibitors and get additional packs of story deck cards. Once you get those packs of story deck cards, you can open them and there will be an assortment of 15 random cards that might make up 3 short stories made up of 54 cards each. In addition to those 3 sets of 54 cards, there was also nonsense story cards, alternate art cards, and herald cards. For each card that you got, there was a story on one side and art on the other, except for the herald cards, which had art of the 9 heralds on one side and then art of a 10th herald on the other side. This is what the binder that they sold at the Dragonsteel store looked like. Stormlight Lost Tales, story deck. The implication is kind of that these 3 stories are the Stormlight Lost Tales and that the brand is story deck. Maybe there will be more story deck cards in the future. I'm not sure, but it was kind of huge and awesome and everyone loved it, so I wouldn't be surprised if there were more in the future. I'll just show this image because I don't want to spoil too much. But one story was called The Chasm Friends Get a Pet, one was called Elsecaller, and one was called King Lopen the First of Alethkar. So that was a fun game on its own to do a portion of or all of the Worldhopper Passport. But then, when you did complete those pages, you got extra packs of story deck cards. Even if you got all 14 possible card packs from the Silverlight Mercantile, you would be getting a random assortment of cards, and so trading was encouraged, and they also had the opportunity to trade at a premium with Silverlight Mercantile to get cards that you didn't have. The currency being your time and your cards, not real money. That would have been fine and fun and fancy-free, except that unfortunately some of the cards were unintentionally rare.
The Lopen 49 card took 7.5 hours of my life today.
I believe in every story, cards 49 through 54 had a high rarity, as well as the last 3 heralds. The heralds were kind of rare already on their own, not too terrible, like it was possible to get them, but the last 3 were almost impossible to get. There were a very lucky few that got those by the end of the convention, and there were a lot of cards. There was a mess of cards all over the place by the end of the day, Saturday night. There were tables of people running their own card shops in the middle of the convention, like multiple card shops of people just like, yeah, give me all your cards and I'll find this little rare one for you and give it to you, because the Silverlight Mercantile tent was ridiculously busy. You would be waiting in an hours-long line to both get your stamps and to trade cards to get better cards. And there was kind of a flaw there that was addressed as quickly as possible, but even when it was addressed, there was just so many people that wanted cards that there was only so much that we could do. This was where I was stationed for day 2 and day 3, along with most of the other people that were on the flexible group, as well as probably additional squires, because it was just so busy. People loved this game. People wanted to get the cards that they didn't have because there was an unintentional scarcity. It was insane. It was a lot. But it was also so fun. I don't know what the future holds for Story Deck, but man, they hit a home run there. There was very obviously way more interest in Story Deck than Dragonsteel had ever anticipated, which is often true of Uncle B's products and events. But I found myself getting high off the adrenaline that came from brainstorming ways to improve the process and finding a need and filling it and running off to go get people stamped and then running back to hand out cards. I escaped. I was part of the story, not Mistborn or Stormlight Archive or the Cytoverse or anything like that. I was part of the story of Brandon Sanderson and Dragonsteel and the convention and the hype surrounding all of it. It was exhilarating. It's a feeling that still resonates with me now, just remembering it. I want to go back. I was no longer Joe Schmo working at my desk job and doing my daily responsibilities, although I love my life. That's not to say I don't want to do that. But it was exhilarating to escape for a few days and be Nathaniel Silas, temporary Dragonsteel employee and apparently part-time card shop owner. It was just fun. Part 2. Observe. Not only was there a lot of things that you could do at the convention, but there was also a lot that you could see, a lot that you could view. There was about 300 total events, and 200 of them were unique. Half of those were activities, half of those were meant to be viewed. There were also a few outliers. Are you a non-fan in need of some survival tips for living with Sanderphiles? There's a panel for that. Have you always wanted to watch Dan Wells watch the movie What's Up, Doc? Done. Do you want to see legendary authors Fonda Lee and Shannon Hale eat a bunch of crickets?
All right. Everybody have a spoonful of delicious creme while we plan the next stage of our treasure hunt.
Dragon still has you covered. I am hungry, just so you guys know. B. Swift had a spoiler Q&A that he had in the biggest room available, which combined both Roshar and Lumar, which meant that there were a ton of people that were either all the way caught up on the Cosmere, which at a minimum is like 18 books or more, depending on how you divide it up, or a lot of them just didn't care about spoilers.
This is the spoiler Q&A. All right? This is the one you want to leave if you haven't read everything.
These spoiler Q&A sessions are fascinating to me because it's like the fans are engineers or scientists that are researching all the different magic systems and scrubbing the lore for different ways that the magic systems can work together, or maybe things that might happen in future books based on what they've read before. If you spend enough time playing around with all the elements in the Cosmere, you might end up discovering something that no one else has. Not even Brandon. For many, the types of questions that are asked might cause one to think, did I even read the same books as you?
Is that because when you have an impulse in the time domain, that's a flat line in the frequency domain? And if so, is there also a phase shift between them to denote?
These are bottom of the iceberg questions. And yet, this huge audience is thrilled by the answers. That's how invested they are in this whole experience. Imagine for a second being able to pick the brain of the leading expert, alive or dead, of your favorite subject. And this expert is going to be as transparent as possible with you about anything that you ask. They're going to try as hard as they can not to lead you down the wrong path, but they're also going to try not to spoil the process of discovery for you. That's what's going on here. And if your question veers in a direction that Bandersnatch doesn't want to answer right now, he hits you with a read and find out card, or RAFO for short. It might even be a prized part of your collection. You might spend time trying to come up with a question that would give you a read and find out card, snowballing the entire process.
Creme. Excellent question. So. You get a partial RAFO so you can get your card.
Brandon is willing to engage with his audience in a unique way and to a remarkable level. Obviously, the main event is the book release. This is where some of the bigger announcements and other talking points take place.
This is now officially the Win and Truth release party, transforming into that.
It has always been open to the public, even those without Dragonsteel tickets, for years, and that still was the case, although it was really hard to get in whether you had a ticket or not. This year they announced that they were making a proper deluxe edition of the Wheel of Time series in partnership with Tor Books and Harriet McDougall, Robert Jordan's widow and editor. For context, Brandon Sanderson was chosen to finish the series after Robert Jordan's death, partially because he's such a huge fan of it. And because he's such a huge fan of the series, he has wanted a big deluxe version of the series and hasn't really found one that he has enjoyed. Dragonsteel Books has been releasing leather-bound editions of Brandon's own books for years now, and so is very practiced in it. And the idea is that they'll be releasing deluxe editions of the Wheel of Time books, one book at a time, for the next 14 years. Emily Sanderson, Brandon's wife and COO of Dragonsteel, talked about the Dragonsteel Village, which was previously announced but will now be known as Dragonsteel Plaza. It will include the new Dragonsteel headquarters as well as a bookstore and obviously a castle. I won't spoil anything from this book, although I did recently finish it. It is the reason for the season after all. With all that happened at Dragonsteel Nexus, it's easy to forget that it really is just a gigantic book release party.
The first roots of what would become Dragonsteel Nexus grew out of my book releases.
There's so much that I didn't even touch on here because there was so much to do there and so much to see there. If there's something major or minor or silly or whatever that I missed that I didn't talk about, please talk about it. I am interested to know what else happened at the convention that I wasn't even aware of.
When you return home, remember what I've talked about. There are people out there who are discovering fantasy for the first time because they're picking up ACOTAR or Fourth Wing, right? And that's awesome. Like, the fact that those books are selling so much and are fantasy novels is so cool. Let's make a place for them, right? Let's make sure we're not gatekeeping who gets to be a fan. That doesn't work anymore. If you want to be here, Dragonsteel Nexus is for you. Thank you for making this our biggest release event ever. The rest of you, have a wonderful convention and take care and enjoy the book.
Interludes. Hey, before we talk about the Worldhopper Ball, I asked a few people if they would share some of their favorite moments from the convention, so here are their stories. Enjoy.
When I think about like a few moments or stories or something like that from Dragonsteel Nexus, or specifically for me, the Worldhopper Ball, kind of like a beginning, middle, and end come to mind. First, like when we arrived in Salt Lake City, we had been planning this in secret, essentially, for over a year and had no one to talk to except for, internal staff and the Dragonsteel's team. And to finally arrive and like see everyone and all the people and all the cosplaying and just so much passion and all the fans that are there, like it, you see that and you're like, okay, we're gonna be all right. Like, this is gonna be good.
Dragonsteel Nexus was the first book convention I ever attended, and the best part about it was I didn't have social anxiety because every person I went up to just wanted to talk about the same exact thing I did, which is all of the books that Brandon Sanderson has written.
I'm Caden Love.
And I'm Seema Love, his wife.
And we are Love and Lore, or I am also Caden Love, author, and she is Seema Love, who does my cover art and many other things. So at Dragonsteel Nexus, we had a booth where I sold my debut Elegy of a Fragmented Vineyard and Beast Call, the novella that came with it, and she sold some Cosmere fan art. So we had lots and lots of fun. Like, it was honestly the highlight of my year. So much fun, and I am dying for it to come this year because I now have 2 more books out, and I just loved meeting people that recognized us. Was so surreal. Meeting some great authors out there, some book influencers, and of course, the convention itself was so much fun. I loved the story deck, I loved attending panels. It was just a blast.
What makes Dragonsteel Nexus so special is the fact that it makes so many people feel included. The fact that so many people who were on the outside, because they had such a niche, nerdy interest, are now part of the in crowd. They're part of the cool kids, because you're surrounded by 8,000 people that are just as fanatical about this thing as you are. They've been just as impacted as you are.
After a few days when our load-in was finished, the very first ball where we literally pulled the curtains and said, welcome to the very first inaugural Worldhopper Ball, and watching the fans come in and just have phones out, hands at their mouth, like having Jackson Dickert sitting on that barrel, insulting people, and me and Kellen from Dragonsteel just kind of standing next to each other, just like gobsmacked at the response. And, I brought tears to both of our eyes, just watching people enjoy this art that we made for everyone. That was an incredible moment. I don't know if anything can beat that feeling just in life, watching someone for the first time interact with something that you spent, over a year of your life on.
An extra special part for me was because it was my first convention, it was also my first time cosplaying. And so dressing up as Yurthiru was this weird, funny idea in my head. But when I showed up, people were just really kind about it and really excited about it. And so to have this weird idea in my brain not just be accepted but celebrated was indicative of a beautiful community, and I just loved every second I spent there.
And what made it so special for me is the fact that I was a squire. I was able to be the person to hand them their badge and see their faces light up with this, I can't believe I'm here, I can't believe this is happening. My incredible interest, my obsession, I'm actually here. And being able to be the person to help them with that, hand them their badge, answer questions, guide them through things, help them find whatever they needed, that was so rewarding for me. And I can't wait to do that year after year, because seriously, being there is special. Being a part of it and being able to see that light in other people, it's unbeatable.
I think it was really well organized, and even though most of the time was filled with interesting panels they could attend, they also had like this art station when if you felt like you needed a break, you could just go there and do like a diamond painting or a puzzle. They had like a station for board games, so there was no chance that you would be bored. And I think that was my favorite part. The organization was done so well.
It was amazing, and we really hope to attend this year and see you all there.
Hi, my name is Jackson. I played Wit at the Worldhopper Ball, not that you could tell by looking at me. You might think that my favorite part of Dragonsteel Nexus would be Brandon Sanderson telling me personally that I did a great job. You might think that, and that's understandable. But it was actually all the friends that I got to make, and the old friends that I got to see that I only get to see once or twice a year at conventions like that. No, just kidding. It was absolutely this.
And then the last session we had, I thought it was going to be kind of like low energy, you know, like everyone's exhausted, just kind of get this last one done, let's move on, let's go home. It's been, 11 days or whatever. And I was shocked at how much everyone just wanted to let go, let loose, and have that, all the energy that they had built up, like the actors and our staff, guests as well. It was so celebratory and just such an incredible feeling to just be surrounded by all these people screaming, "Welcome to the Black Parade," with Jackson Miller and Jackson Dickert and Cliff and everyone on our team. At the end of all of that it's hard to even put into words. It was just an incredible thing to see the culmination of all that work just be like kids having fun who are doing the thing that they love doing more than anything on earth. Lots of tears after that. Lots and lots of tears after that. I think we stayed at the convention center until well past 2 a.m, just talking and oh, did you see that? Do you remember that? Like, man, I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget any of these moments. I still can't believe it happened. So let's hope it happens again, huh?
Part 3, Act B. The main convention was huge, but it wasn't all Sanderland had in store for us. On July 1st, 2024, Dragonsteel posted a video titled "We're Doing Something," where they teased something called the Worldhopper Ball 2024. In dramatic fashion, fans waited almost 3 weeks for the full reveal. There will be some spoilers for the first 3 Stormlight Archive books in this section, but if you already know the theme of the ball, that's like the major spoiler, so you won't get into too much trouble if you do continue watching. If you do want to skip, just in case, here's the timestamp. On July 19th, the teaser was followed up by another video titled An Experiential Cosmere Novella. We hear lines from the Stormlight Archive narrators Michael Kramer and Kate Redding as the camera pans in on a wedding invitation for High Prince Adolin Kholin and Brightness Shalon Devar. Benedict Sanderbat shows up and explains that there will be some acting that will go on and people in costume that you can get pictures with. The invitation also mentions live performances, Rosharan cuisine, exclusive collectibles, and a few familiar faces. It was to be an experiential novella, as it said. A fancy ball with dinner and a show, all packaged in a Stormlight theme. The top comment on the video asked the question, will you have someone dressed as Wit insulting people as they come in? That's foreshadowing. When the night of your session arrives, you line up wearing your Cosmere best. The line is long and winding, but once you finally arrive at the front, you ride escalators to the top floor where you are greeted by 2 Oathgate Spren and a life-size recreation of the archway shown at the beginning of each chapter in the Stormlight Archive books. Once you pass through the Oathgate, there is a beautiful, dimly lit hallway as you cross from your realm to that of Roshar. Then, on through some dark curtains, you walk along a red carpet into a large, open area. Immediately, you're greeted by the King's Wit flinging an insult in your direction. In front of you, large pillars with stormlight lamps surrounded a faux marble dance floor. Red and blue banners hang throughout the room with the glyphs of House Devar, House Colin, and a combined glyph representing their union. A market with food and drinks surrounded the outer walls. Food is provided by the in-world Gauntcho catering cousins, and you can get drinks at Jez's duty. There is fancy but limited seating available, along with cocktail tables and other creative decor to help sell the vision of entering this new world. On one table, you can burn glyph prayers. On another, a life-size shard blade is out for everyone to see. In the back, there's a stage where the wedding will take place. So, what will you do? You catch the zinger Wit shouts at you, and you sling one right back at him. Ben notices this and laughs out loud. He walks over and pats you on the back, congratulating you for outwitting the King's Wit. He forgives you for your terribly embarrassing fall earlier. Say the words, he says. You know the words. You've known the words all along in your heart, and so they flow naturally out of you. How's that, Ben? Each guest was given 2 spheres to pay for drinks at Jez's duty. You could choose anything on the wine spectrum, from pink to violet or even a Horneater lager. In reality, 5 of the drinks were alcoholic and 5 were not. Whichever drink you chose, it came out in a large commemorative goblet, identical to the goblets provided in gift bags at the end of the night. For food, you could get some of Rock's stew or some Herdagian chowta, consisting of meatballs and gravy rolled into a conical flatbread. Unfortunately, the line for the drinks was ridiculously long on the first night, dampening the enthusiasm of some as people were in line for a good chunk of time at an event that they paid a lot of money for. There were efforts to improve the lines on successive nights to mixed results, but supposedly the other nights had it a little bit better. During the bit that I saw, everyone gathered around the main dance floor in front of the stage. Wit began introducing the characters, including Dalinar and Navani, Yasna, Kaladin, and the happy couple Adolin and Shallan. Wit also took the stage himself and snarked his way through a welcoming monologue to the wedding guests. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time that Cosmere actors have seen an audience in an official capacity. After years of courting Hollywood, the Sandersons, Dragonsteel, and Paladin Creative, who put this production on, took things into their own hands, and it was exciting to be in the room where the page hit the stage for the first time. This experiential novella included what you might expect at a wedding. Wit was the MC, and we witnessed wedding vows and some dialogue between the happy couple, as well as speeches from all the main characters present. Adolin and Shallan had their first dance with a dose of physical comedy. Kaladin and Adolin sparred together in a choreographed dance of weapons. There was a spear show from Bridge 4 and even an aerial silk performance by the Honor Spren. In some sessions, Brandon and Emily Sanderson even came out and looked fabulous. Brandon gave a fourth wall-breaking wedding speech about meeting each of these characters and what they meant to him. At one point, Wit's voice could be heard chastising someone, and if you were in the right spot, you could see him escorting them out of the premise. This is pretty spoilery, as it confirms a popular fan theory that hadn't yet been confirmed by Bam Bam. It was an odd thing to happen if you didn't know what was going on or if you couldn't see what was happening, but it's pretty cool for them to involve us in the story in this way. There was a major plot reveal that happened there first, making the motto of the convention be part of the story an actual reality. We were part of the story. It was awesome. It reminded me of Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, but more intimate. It was even a bit like the late Evermore Park, or at least the vision of it that everybody wanted that park to be. When the main performances were over and the canon portion of the evening was ended, Wit brought out everyone's favorite sad boy, as only Wit could imagine him, DJ Stormblessed. This was one of my favorite parts of the entire evening. As the non-canon portion of the night began and the plucking of strings faded in, Adolin and Shallan ran back out to the dance floor in costume and encouraged everyone to celebrate with them. This wasn't just dinner and a show. The characters that you just watched on stage came to your level, grabbed your hand and pulled you onto the dance floor to dance with them. Adolin was singing along with Panic at the Disco. People were chanting Wit's name as he soaked it all in while riding on the shoulders of a Dragonsteel employee. Even Jasna let loose. It added a whole new level of interactivity that, I don't know, just felt that much more magical. I think Dragonsteel is still a relatively small company, trying to accomplish really big things, and there are inevitable hiccups that happen in that process, even with the best of intentions. And from where I stood, at least, they did have the best of intentions. There was a lot of really good people just trying to make a great experience for everyone there. That included audibles and doing things at the last minute to try and make that experience even better when things didn't go quite as planned. For the majority of people, the Worldhopper Ball was a resounding success. People felt like they were transported to another realm and got to experience the ultimate LARP of their favorite piece of fiction. The success of this event is on the heads of everyone involved. Dragonsteel found a great partner in Paladin Creative, an event studio that took the reins on this party. Brandon and Emily Sanderson seem to have a gift for delegation. And by that, I mean that they are really good at allowing skilled people and passionate people to use their great talents to bring everything to new heights. That skill has trickled down into Dragonsteel and their partners. Paladin put together a wonderful set for all of us to act in as attendees at this wedding, and they set us free inside of it. Each person was not only talented, but passionate about the project they were working on. Kaladin was played by Cliff Weitzman, the CEO of Speechify, who literally modeled the leadership of his company after Kaladin and Bridge 4. He even emailed Brandon Sanderson years ago about his desire to play Kaladin in a movie. This role was a dream come true for him. Okay, now watch what he does here. He just did a perfect spinning backflip into the superhero landing from the cover of Words of Radiance while holding a spear. What? Okay, that was awesome. Cole Joy and Kathy Ford as Dalinar and Navani fit their parts really well. Their wedding speeches were both amusing and meaningful. Jackson Miller, also known as Jack Supertoast, was just as much the cheerful, confident Adolin that we could have ever hoped for. Savannah Carrasco was fantastic as the version of Shallan that we see before the wedding at the end of Oathbringer, and Wexla was Jasna to a T, clever and just barely holding back the genius behind Jasna's eyes. Jackson and Savannah had great chemistry as the newlyweds, and their enthusiasm to play these characters really paid off. All of the actors began rehearsal together not too long before the actual event, but because they're professionals, they were able to pull things together quickly. Jackson and Savannah choreographed their dance. The duel that Cliff and Jackson had wasn't even part of the original production. They just had the idea, asked if they could do it, and then practiced it until they had it down. And then there was Wit. Wit was played by author and sarcastic Eagle Scout Jackson Dickert. For the last year and a half of his real life, he's been mocking authors between two perns and apparently practicing for this role. Turns out all of his probably unintentional practice paid off, and he took his time to dive into the books and get to know all of Wit's witticisms. Good job, man. You actually do your research. Jackson's portrayal of Wit hit a note with fans, both on and off the stage. If you weren't an immediate fan, you probably warmed up to him as the night went on. He sat at the entrance to the ballroom, casting off a flurry of insults, as I mentioned earlier. Later, he could be found monologuing on stage or roaming the party in character. The people loved Wit, and they loved being ridiculed by him.
Hello, sir. Hello. You look quite ugly. Oh, thank you. You're very welcome.
The ringleaders of this little operation were Brandon and Monica Finn, heads of Paladin Creative. I had just a couple of interactions with Mr. Finn, and he didn't just seem like he was doing his job. He seemed like he really cared about the result. He wanted the Worldhopper Ball to be a magical experience for everyone. Really, truly fantastic job to everyone involved in creating and carrying out the Worldhopper Ball. You made something unique and special and good that was appreciated by many. I would have never thought to expect something like the Worldhopper Ball. But now that it exists, like, of course it exists. Why wouldn't we collectively do this awesome thing every year? Epilogue. Even after 3 days of running around, I left the convention feeling renewed. It recharged my sense of wonder. It was Christmas and Disneyland and homemade cinnamon rolls. It was a novelty. Whit from the Stormlight Archive might describe it as art. And it was invigorating to be part of the story that Nexus was telling. It inspired me to create more, hence this video, and even after this video is done, I plan on writing more of my own stories. So many people there were creators themselves, and I don't mean like content creators. I mean people who are creative, who make things just because of the love of creating. During the Q&A event, a fan asked Brandon about the show Arcane and the high level of quality that comes with that show, and if he would ever want to make a Cosmere adaptation similar to that. Brandon responded and spoke of seeking partners that are passionate about their work.
I'm considering everything, but it's that partner. Finding the people who are super passionate and super skilled about this specifically.
To his point, in a recent interview, the creators of Arcane said that people think that they create the show Arcane in order to sell skins in the game League of Legends, when in reality, they create the skins in order to make a show like Arcane. That passion seems obvious when watching the show, and that passion is the same passion that I saw at Dragonsteel Nexus back in December. Look, I realize I'm laying it on thick. This was just a convention. It's not that big of a deal. There's more important things in life. But this was special. I enjoyed it. This is not a review. This is a celebration. And at Dragonsteel Nexus 2024, I gained an appreciation for all of the employees, partners, creators, fans, exhibitors that Sanderson books attract. His books are intentionally inclusive and empathetic to all people. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. It doesn't matter your age or your race or your orientation or your spiritual beliefs or your political beliefs or your economic status or hobbies or anything. You are welcome in Sanderland. The Sandersons run a kind and compassionate ship over at Dragonsteel. That's evident in the way that they treat people and in the way that their employees treat others. I felt valued and heard even though none of them knew me. I loved being around those empathetic nerds. And speaking of nerds, I want to show some appreciation for all the people that helped me out with this video. There were so many people that I reached out to that allowed me to use their own videos, as well as gave me information that I was looking for and even sent me some videos to use. I especially want to shout out Lord Loopy 0 for reasons that you'll see in a moment. Please show everyone some love. Dragonsteel Nexus was just another one of Mr. Sanderson's magic systems, except for this was powered by the real-life wonder, creativity, empathy, and passion of everyone there. I'm invested now, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Szeth-Son-Son-Vallano, Truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king. The drummers began a new rhythm. They danced and drank and yelled and sang. Szeth did not sway to the drums, drink the sapphire wine, nor stand to dance. He sat on a bench at the back, a still servant in white robes.
Don't spoil stories!
I am intelligent and articulate. You should compliment me now.
I am a stick.
You could be fired.
I am a stick.
Welcome to the party.
Your first thought was to get Edelwin?
Shalom!
No mating.
Szeth-Son-Son-Vallano, Truthless of Shinovar, sat atop the highest tower in the world and contemplated the end of all things.
Yasna pretended to enjoy the party. Eshonai insisted on joining the drummers. She beat to the rhythm in her head. Focus on the rhythms, pulsing through her soul. The drums cut off around her.
Airsick Lowlander? What is a cow? Never mind. Theologians use you as proof that God exists, because such hideousness can only be intentional. Sometimes, a hypocrite is nothing more than a man who is in the process of changing. Szeth-Son-Son, Szeth-Son, Szeth. Truthless Szeth, just Szeth, had been reborn. Honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. Paladin's muscles burned with energy, with the desire to move, causing his blood to pump in a powerful rhythm. Somebody has to stop it, son. She smiled anyway. Unite them.
What will I discover next?
You get to choose. Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination.